Hey, what's going on? What's up? What's up? What's happening, everybody? This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. So, for those of you that might be celebrating Labor Day, happy Labor Day to you guys. I hope you all are enjoying yourself on this beautiful Monday. So it's September the 6th of 2021. So today on Labor Day, I want to get into the discussion about the city of Atlanta. So I want to talk about the city of Atlanta, and I'm going to be doing some information about the people that have made the contribution out here in the South, out here in the A, and the work they have done. So one of the things I want to talk about is the riots that took place in 1966, which was the Summerhill riot. All right. So the reason for that riot for happening, this was during the time when what was the name of the mayor? This was during the time when um, Ivan Allen Jr. when Ivan Allen Jr. was the mayor of Atlanta. Okay, around that time period. So and this is when they had the SNCC. The SNCC was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was which Stokely Carmichael was a part of. So there was an incident in 1966 in Summerhill, which is a neighborhood of Atlanta, south of downtown, where an African American male was shot by the police, and so that started the whole riot. Um, and of course, Nick was accused of that, accusing inciting a riot. You know how that goes. So yeah, you always gotta accuse somebody else for people choices and stuff like that. But but for decades, riot's been going on. Riot's been going on for a long time, even when the slave revolts took place. All right. So this is one of the information that I did not know, and I don't think many people know. So yeah, the 1966 riot really played a really played a contribution into the Atlanta history. So it's a lot of history, a lot of information out here regard to Atlanta that a lot of people don't know about. All right. Um, and for me, since I grew up out here, since I grew up in the A, I had to eventually branch off and study on my own about certain things. So I know certain history, but I don't know a lot of it. But yeah, Atlanta has a very unique history, especially when it comes to Black people. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and present the source. Um, Also, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching and you like the contents on here, you can also share the channel. And if you also want to support my channel, I have the Cash App information at the bottom of the screen. So the Cash App information is at the bottom of the screen if you guys want to support the channel. It's Cash App $Tip World. Cash App $Tip World. So there's the information right there. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So what I would like to do is I would like to present some things that I have looked up so far regarding to this anniversary. So this happened again in 1966. So that was around 55 years ago. That was 55 years ago. Okay. All right. So much don't be talked about. A lot of people don't talk much about it, but here it is. Okay. I want to show you guys some images. So let's start off with the images first. All right. So you guys can barely see that, but that's one of the images that took place in the downtown area. Now, this was the time when they was in the process of building the Atlanta Stadium. The Atlanta Fulton County Stadium is where the Atlanta Braves and the Atlanta Falcons both played in. All right. So now, and at that time period, the project was around $17 million. So I don't know how much that would be today's time. That'd probably be somewhere up in the hundreds, somewhere probably like up to the like 170, 180 million, somewhere like that today. But back then, that was $17 million project, and they put over there in that area to build the stadium. Okay, so they built the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium at that time period. So now it's no longer there. I think it's just a parking lot. I'm not sure if it's a parking lot or if they put something else over there now. I know it was just a parking lot at that time after they tore it down. So, and then they had built the Turner Field Stadium, and then they turned over. They had moved Turner Field to another location in Cobb County, and then the Atlanta. Then what was it? The Georgia Dome was built in '92. Then they tore down the Georgia Dome around 2016 when they opened up the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. All right. And over there where the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is where Friendship Baptist Church used to be. Friendship Baptist Church was founded by the former slaves themselves. And that's where Spelman College started. It started at the basement of that church. But again, I will go into all of that later. But yeah, I just want to show you guys some images. All right, so let me show you guys some more pictures. All right, so as you can see, that's the brother right there. He holding up a picture. It says, "We want justice. Help stop police brutality against the black man." Okay. Then I got another one. All right, and then as you can see, they all downtown right here. Okay. So what I want to do is, so I can get you guys familiarized with Summerhill, I'm gonna go into the little history about Summerhill downtown. You know, the history about the neighborhood and stuff. So I told you guys a little bit, but I want to show you guys more. So you can find it on Wikipedia actually. Okay. So let's look up Summerhill. All right. Summerhill is a neighborhood directly south of downtown Atlanta between the Atlanta Zoo and Center Park Stadium. It is bordered by the neighborhoods of Grand Park, Mechanicsville, and Peoplestown. Established in 1865, Summerhill is one of Atlanta's oldest neighborhoods and part of the 26 neighborhoods making up the Atlanta Neighborhood Planning Unit system. All right. Now, here's the history. Okay, so one of two settlements established after the Civil War by William Jennings in 1865. Summerhill's early inhabitants were free slaves and Jewish immigrants. Okay, I'm gonna highlight that for you. One of two settlements established after the Civil War by William Jennings in 1865. Summerhill's early inhabitants were free slaves and Jewish immigrants. In 1911, 2/3 of Atlanta's Jewish residents lived in Summerhill. Woods Chapter and Clark's Chapter began offering worship services in 1866 within close proximity of each other. Woods Chapter subsequently became Allen Temple AME. Anyways, Clark's Chapel's congregation was mixed and sought to also promote education, which it its accomplishment by holding the first classes of Clark College and Gammon Theological Seminary. Okay. And this map still around to this day, Gammon Theological Seminary, which is now the Interdenominational Theological Center. Okay. So I'm going to read that part again because I kind of messed up. Woods Chapel subsequently became Allen Temple AME. Clark's Chapel's congregation was mixed and sought to also promote education, right, which it accomplished by holding the first class of Clark College and Gammon Theological Seminary in its basement. Clark's Chapel was ultimately renamed the Lloyd Street Church. Okay. So as you can see, this is the picture of where Turnfield used to be. Okay. So Turnfield was in the area of Summerhill. Okay. Anyway, so in 1867, Frederick Ayer founded his school at Richardson and Martin Streets. The Atlanta Board of Education brought it 3 years later, making it the only public school for Black children in the city. The school was eventually renamed the E.P. Johnson Elementary School. Then I'm going to go into the whole thing about the Summerhill riot. Then, of course, during the 1996 Summer Olympic Games, Summerhill was the site of the opening and closing ceremonies and track and field events at the Centennial Olympic Stadium. After the Olympics, the stadium was converted to Turner Field. So in 1996, the Centennial Olympic Stadium was converted into Turner Field, where the Atlanta Braves played through the end of the 2016 season. Okay. The Turner Field and its adjacent parking lot were acquired by Georgia State University in January 2017, and the former ballpark was renovated into Georgia State Stadium, renamed Center Park Stadium for the Panthers football team. The first Atlanta Braves stadium, Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, located next door, was their home when the team first moved to Atlanta in 1966 until its demolition after the 1997 season. Okay, so since 1996, the neighborhood has been the site of rapid development. It is profiled as a case in urban development in Alexander von Hoffman's House by House, Block by Block, the rebirth of America's urban neighborhoods. Summerhill is now viewed as one of the most up-and-coming areas in downtown Atlanta. Home values have continued to rise, and more upper middle class families are calling Summerhill home. All right, so of course they got a list of people that grew up over there in Summerhill. Some of y'all familiar with them, some of y'all not. So again, here's the reference at the bottom, and there's the external links where you guys can look up more information. Okay. All right. So that's enough about Summerhill as far as the neighborhood. So Summerhill is the area where the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium was at, and the Turnerfield Stadium. So it's right over there on Hank Aaron Drive, because there's a street that's named after Hank Aaron, and Capitol Avenue. I think, what's the name of the street? I think the street is called Capitol Avenue. I can't remember. All right, so over in that little area, right now, where Turnerfield used to be, where the Turnerfield Stadium used to be, okay, which is now taken over by Georgia State, used to be the Centennial Olympic Stadium. This is when they first brought the Olympics to Atlanta in 1996. Okay, so Atlanta became the city, or became the home of Olympics. All right. So it was the Olympic Stadium right there. Then when they tore it down, they turned it over to Turner Field. Okay. And then you got the Centennial Park. You got all this great stuff going on. So all that little area right there, that's Summerhill. Okay. That's Summerhill. And by the way, Turnerfield was right there in the hood too. So if you go up the street from where Turnerfield used to be, you'll be right there in the hood. Yep, it was in the hood. But anyways, but that area was predominantly and still is predominantly a Black community to this day. Of course, you got the whole gentrification going on and whatnot. But let's look at the riots that happened during that time period. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So one information I'm going to use is this website right here. This website is called allenarchive.iac.gatech.edu, which comes from the Ivan Allen Digital Archive. All right. And it says the Summerhill riot is more heavily represented in the Ivan Allen Digital Archive than any other single event from the tenure of Mayor Allen. The number and range of documents in the archive reflect both the importance and the complexity of these events to Mayor Allen's legacy and the history of race relation in Atlanta. To date, there is no comprehensive resource on the event that became known as the Summerhill riot. The Ivan Allen Digital Archive is the main repository of primary sources material related to this historic event, making it a key resource in the development of the narratives about the Summerhill riot. All right, so here it is. The Summerhill riots, also known as the Atlanta Rebellion, is a series of events that began on September 6, 1966 in the majority Black neighborhood of Summerhill following the police shooting of an unarmed Black man, Harold Prather. A group of Summerhill residents, which grew to over 1,000 people, gathered together in response to the shooting to protest long-term local problems related to ongoing inequities, including discriminatory policing, poor housing, inadequate public service, the urban renewal policies that had affected the neighborhood, and the recent construction of the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium on the edge of Summerhill. All right. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which had been active in Atlanta since its founding in 1960, became involved when members of the organization joined the protesters. A heavy police presence was met with resistance by protesters, which resulted in the image of the events as a riot. As the situation escalated, Mayor Allen visited the neighborhood of Summerhill to address protesters directly. A series of memorable photographs of Mayor Allen at the riots are available in the Ivan Allen Jr. Digital Collection. Allen placed blame for the events directly on SNCC. Members of SNCC, including Carmichael, would be arrested soon after. The Summerhill uprising was reported in the national media, and Mayor Allen would receive widespread praise for his response. A chapter in Allen's memoir, Mayor Notes on the 60s Tire Riot, provided his account of the events in Summerhill. All right, and then down here says two exhibits: Response to Summerhill and SNCC, Black Power and the Atlanta Rebellion collection, the 16 photos about the Summerhill riot from the Ivan Allen Digital Archive. Okay. All right, so this is that website. Now, let's go and let's look up some more information. All right, and peace to Brother Centavo, peace to Brother Umi. Thank y'all for coming through. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. All right, so let's look at the Georgia Civil Rights Cold Cases Project at Emory University. Hewlett M. Varner Jr. All right. So it says on September the 6th. Oh, and it's by Nathaniel Mayershon. On September 6, 1966, I was at the Atlanta police shot and seriously wounded a Black suspect car theft. Hundreds of Black riot in the area around the newly built Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. The $18 million project Mayor Ivan Allen Jr. had supported to lure a major league baseball team to the city, crying Black power and decrying the white bastards. Protesters hurled rocks and bottles and overturned police cars and television trucks. At least 15 people were injured in the violence, including 4 policemen. Mayor Allen rushed to the scene and pleaded for calm from atop a police car, but protesters chanted "White Devil, White Devil." Police arrested 63 people, including Stokely Carmichael, the Fury leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and other SNCC officials. More than a year after the Selma March drew thousands of supporters to Alabama and the Watts riots in Los Angeles shocked the nation, and only months after racial tensions escalated in Cleveland and Chicago, Atlanta drew national attention as the latest major city forced to confront urban unrest. The riots stained Atlanta's well-maintained reputation as the city too busy to hate, a model of racial harmony in the South, and particularly alarmed Mayor Allen, whose congressional testimony in support of the 1964 Civil Rights Act helped bolster the city's progressive national image. Okay, so let's talk about the concept of a city too busy to hate. At once upon a time, Atlanta was not always like that. Because if anybody knows about the history of the South and the racial segregation, of course, Atlanta had that. All right, let me tell you how I know. Auburn Avenue was considered as the Black Wall Street of Atlanta. Okay. And not only was Auburn Avenue was the Wall Street of Atlanta, but Peachtree was where a lot of white folks hung out at. So many Black people couldn't go over there to Peachtree. And in that certain areas of Atlanta that was occupied by the Ku Klux Klan. So that means you as a Black person, you move in, especially in the suburbs that we know of today, you as a Black person move over there to those suburban areas and see what's going to happen to you. So it wasn't always that harmony. And even when W.E.B. Du Bois, during his time when he was a professor at Clark College, and Booker T. Washington, during that time period around 1909, there was racial riots taking place. And also there was a lot of Black people who had leukemia. So a lot of Black folks that was getting sick and they was down for leukemia and they had poor health conditioning, right? And they stayed over there in the area where Dr. King had grew up at, over there in that area. So a lot of those Black people had very bad health conditioning. They was living in stricken poverty and all of that. So it was really devastating. And then, let's not go into the history about Grady Hospital. A lot of people say, I'm a Grady baby. Okay, cool. You're a Grady baby. But what you don't know is that the hospital, which is named after Grady himself was a white nationalist. Okay, he was a white nationalist that supported the Confederate armies. He was down with white supremacy. Okay. Not only that, Grady was at one time, Black people could not go to Grady Hospital. And when they started letting Black people at Grady, they had a certain area where the Black people had to be at and the white people had to be. Okay. The Black people had to be in one area of the hospital and the white folks was at another area of the hospital. Then after a while, of course, they started letting Blacks come all together. But it was a segregation. So again, there was hate going on in the city. Now, it may not have been as bad as other places like Memphis or places like Mississippi or Alabama, but it was here. It was taking place in the South. It was taking place in Atlanta. So everything wasn't peaches and cream. All right. Well, let me go ahead and continue. Okay, let's continue. It says 4 days after the riots, William Haywood James, a white 42-year-old carpenter and tree trimmer, and his wife Edna Ruth was driving their 1959 Chevrolet through the Boulevard neighborhood of Atlanta in the early evening. James and his wife were heading south on Boulevard, a predominantly black section of the city's old Fourth Ward, while Hewlett M. Varner Jr., a 16-year-old black teenager, and a few of his friends had gathered on the curb in front of the apartment building where Varner and his family lived. James and his wife drove past the boys, then suddenly stopped and put the car in reverse. Witness Ronald Barnes told police James' fateful decision to back his car up to the crowd of boys would lead to a series of events that left a young man dead on the streets, produced a high-profile criminal trial with a surprising outcome, and led the Supreme Court of Georgia to trump the trial verdict with an unexpected decision of its own. All right, and then here's the newspaper right here. Okay, couple held here in Negroes killing. A 42-year-old Atlantan and his wife were held Tuesday in the fatal shooting of Negro boy that set off 3 nights of rioting in the vicinity of Georgia Baptist Hospital. Now, Georgia Baptist Hospital became Atlanta Medical, which is now Wellstar Hospital. Okay, now that's over there on the east side. That's like the east side going towards what used to be Grady High School, now is Midtown High School. Okay, but that's a newspaper article. Let's see what else we can find on here, because it's a lot, so I may not read a whole lot on here, but let's see what we can find on here. It says earlier that evening, according to a statement of the facts for the case that reached the Supreme Court of Georgia, James and his wife had a confrontation with a separate group of teenagers. Someone had called "Hey baby" or "Hey sweetheart" to Mrs. James while she and her husband were driving. And seeing it, Mrs. James pulled a gun out of a paper sack, but the group dashed from the car and ran away. Several minutes later, the couple drove past a group of people standing outside Varner's home at 4020 Boulevard, 2 miles from the Gold Dome of the Georgia State Capitol. James suspected that someone in the group had called out to his wife, and he stopped the car. The high court's statement of the facts showed. Witness Ronald Barnes told police that James backed up the Chevy to the apartment building and yelled out to the crowd, "You talking to us?" Alice King, one of the teenagers in the group, replied that no one had said anything, but James pushed his wife back and fired his pistol 6 times through the opening car window. King told authorities one of the bullets struck Roy Wright, Varner's 16-year-old friend, wounding him in the back and side, and another bullet hit Varner in the left eye. James and his wife raced from the scene, speeding south on Boulevard. Witnesses told police shortly after, Atlanta Police Sergeant Marvin J. Spears arrived on the scene and was shot in the head. Ambulance rushed to take Sergeant Spears to Grady Hospital, while the 2 boys were taken after Spears in a second ambulance, a delay that Black observers criticized. All right, so let's see what else we can find on here. It says the shooting death of Varner incited another round of racial violence that evening. The second in 5 days, Mayor Allen and his wife visited the mothers of Varner and Wright the following day to offer their sympathies. "We have boys of our own. I know how you must feel," Mrs. Allen told an inconsolable Nora Varner. Mayor Allen offered a $10,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of the perpetrators of the shooting and pledged the full force of the city government to apprehend and convict the person or persons guilty. It says 2 days later, William Haywood James and his wife Edna Ruth James were arrested and arraigned for the fatal shooting. James, who had a 7-page police report dating back to 1942 and was already on bond from a September arrest for robbery, pleaded not guilty. A state grand jury indicted James for murder. All right, so now after the riot had took place on September the 6th of 1966, there was another incident that happened. So as you guys may wonder, well, what am I reading? There was another incident, but this time this had nothing to do with the police. It had something to do with a white couple that was driving down on Boulevard, right? And they see a group of teenage boys hanging out of the apartment complex. So as they was hanging out of the apartment complex, the husband thought one of the boys had said something to their wife saying, "Hey, sweetie," or "Hey, sweetheart," trying to hit on her or something. So they got the car, they drawn the gun, and shot and killed one of the boy and shot another boy. So they shot into the crowd. Okay. So remember again, these neighborhoods were segregated, right? This happened in 1966. All right, this was after the Civil Rights Movement and the Civil Rights Act Bill came into place. The Civil Rights Act Bill came into place in 1964. The Voting Rights Act came into 1965. This happened in 1966. All right. So again, around this time, September the 6th, you had the Atlanta Rebellion riot. And then due to the police brutality, then you had another incident that happened right after where 2 boys get shot by a couple, which creates another riot and creates another problem. All right, so we gotta go into this. Let's see. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip down a little bit. It says in February of 1967, right? James was tried in Judge Stonewall Dyer's Fulton County Superior Court. George K. McPherson, the Fulton County Assistant Solicitor General, prosecuted the case for the state, which sought the death penalty. McPherson had the daunting task of convincing an all-white Fulton County jury to convict a white man for murdering a black man. An improbable assignment, considering the near immunity white juries in the South gave to those who committed racially motivated crimes against blacks. And on Tuesday, February 7th, both sides made arguments before the jury of 10 men and 2 women in what news account consistently referred to as unsworn testimony. James told the court that he acted out of fear for the safety of his wife and himself. "I didn't mean to kill anybody," James said. "I was protecting my wife." James claimed that he was stuck on the head with a brick and attacked as he and his wife drove through the Boulevard section of Atlanta, according to the Atlanta Constitution reporter Ruben Smith. James added that he shot a couple of times in self-defense. The defense, in an attempt to strengthen its argument that James only fired after blacks attacked him, contended that the riots were in progress before Varner was killed. It gets interesting, right? All right. It gets interesting. All right, so it says Detective Lieutenant J.E. Helms, however, testified that there were no disturbances in the area before the shooting. The state called 4 eyewitnesses to shooting, all of whom testified that James had shot Varner unprovoked. McPherson, the Fulton County Assistant Solicitor General, argued to the jury that James fabricated his stories. Then, in an very unusual and blunt pitch to the jury members, the Assistant Solicitor General challenged them to find James, a white man, guilty of murdering a black youth, a crime that often went unpunished in the Jim Crow South. And yes, Georgia was the Jim Crow South. For those of you that may not know, You have an opportunity to destroy an ugly, malicious stigma that a white man would not be convicted in the South of murdering a Negro, McPherson told jurors. I ask you to find this man guilty of murder regardless of how you feel towards the Negro population. Are we going to be another Alabama or Mississippi? Are we going to be another Alabama or Mississippi? Because Mississippi and Alabama was known for letting off whites for murder, especially when it came to African Americans. If you guys know about the Emmett Till situation, when those white guys took him out of his uncle's cabinet and beat him to death and threw him in the water, and they was let off, all because he whistled at a white woman. And in this case, this man shot at a couple of teenagers because he thought that they was whistling at his wife, trying to hit on her. And so you gotta remember, at that time period, if you're a black guy trying to hit on some white woman, your ass was in trouble. Your ass was in serious trouble. Them white folks was gonna come for your ass. That you be black trying to hit on somebody's white, especially a white woman, you in trouble. All right. The following day, the jury found James guilty of murder. The prosecution asked for the death penalty, but the jury recommended mercy. Upon the jury's binding recommendation, Judge Dyer sentenced James to life imprisonment. McPherson pleaded to break the South well-documented history of acquitting whites for racially driven murders had resonated with the jurors. All right. All right, so now let's go down here. Let's go down a little further. So it says, led by Justice W.H. Duckworth, the unanimous High Court found that Judge Dyer erred in denying the admission of the testimony of two witnesses, Fred Riley and Officer Marvin J. Spears, who was shot the night Barner was killed. James' attorneys had argued that the officers would have been able to support James' account that he acted in self-defense in riotous condition. The Supreme Court agreed with James' attorney. The High Court said that the possible testimony from Riley and Spears was relevant to show the condition existing in that neighborhood and to corroborate the defendant's statements that riotous condition exists at the time of the shooting. Yet both Riley and Spears' testimonies concerned events that occurred after James shot Barner. Neither witness could have provided evidence to confirm James' allegation that violence had already erupted before he shot Barner. The court also ruled that a statement Judge Dyer made about James' defense counsel in the presence of the jury was prejudicial and improper. All right. And then it goes on to say 8 months after a Fulton County. As a matter of fact, here's a newspaper article right here. I don't think I can click on it. All right, so here's this newspaper article right here that came from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. All right, going down, it says 8 months after a Fulton County Superior Court found James guilty of murder, the state Supreme Court ruled that Judge Dyer's exclusion of testimony and his prejudicial statement during the proceeding constituted sufficient enough error to overturn the conviction. The court concluded judgment reversed. All the justices concurred. At the request of the Georgia Civil Rights Cold Case Project at Emory, a former law clerk two Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Georgia reviewed the High Court's 1967 decision. Virginia Looney, who served as law clerk to Chief Justice Norman Fletcher for 12 years, and Carol Hunstein for 3 years, and served as the City of Atlanta's ethics chief for 8 years. She said she was surprised the jury verdict was overturned. I found the opinion annoying because it did not distinguish between error, harmless error, and reversible error, she wrote in her analysis. And it says Looney also asserted that the trials court was correct in denying omission of testimony on events that took place after the homicide to show riotous condition exists at the time of the shooting. Of what relevance are events after the defendant killed Varner, Looney concluded. It says on January 22nd, 1968, more than 3 months after the Georgia Supreme Court overturned James' licenses, James entered a plea of guilty to voluntary manslaughter for Varner's murder. The historical records that have been gathered on this civil rights cold case are unclear about what led to this outcome. Judge Mac G. Hicks sentenced James to 20 years in prison to run concurrently with a 6-year sentence. James was already serving for an assault with intent to murder charge. On January 29th, James' sentence was amended to serve 14 years in prison with 6 years of probation following the time served. Not long after James was paroled, he was arrested again, this time for the July 1973 armed robbery of a liquor store. He was convicted and sentenced for life imprisonment. Again, he appealed to the Supreme Court of Georgia. This time, the High Court upheld his conviction. Damn. So again, this is the cold case, and you can find this on the Georgia Civil Rights Cold Case Project at Emory University. Just go to coldcases.emory.edu. All right. So it goes in to talk about what happened during that night of the riots and how it happened, when it happened, and so a lot of things was going on in that time. So in the midst of the riot, you had somebody that was shot and killed. An innocent person was killed by the police, right? Then you had another incident where the teenage boys were shot by white couples, and of course the prosecutor who prosecuted the husband, he got convicted. They was gonna give him life in prison. They wanted to give him the death penalty. The jury said, "Nah, we shouldn't give him the death penalty." Then after a while, they overturned his conviction. Instead of him serving life in prison, he served 20 years, and then they reduced it to like 14 years and gave him 6 years of probation. Then he got hit with an armed robbery back in 1973. Some years later, then he ended up going back to the courts, and they upheld his conviction. So this goes to show you that there was justice trying to be made in this case regarding to a young African-American teenager. Obviously, the prosecutor, who happened to be a white man himself, who had to convince an all-white jury, said, look, we're not trying to be like what happened in Alabama and Mississippi. Okay, we're not trying to be like them, let these white folks get off because they white and they got privilege and they can get away with that. It don't matter how you feel about black folks. We're looking at a case where somebody killed an innocent person. That's how he was looking at it. He wasn't looking at, oh, it was just black and white. He was looking at, oh, this white man killed the innocent teenager. So by him killing the innocent teenager, he shouldn't be let off. Y'all should at least convict this man and get this man death penalty, because enough is enough. Pretty much, that was the argument. But again, with the justice system, it's a dirty game. It's a dirty game that you're playing. And when I say it's a dirty game, and don't think that the judge and the defense lawyers and all of them don't have some type of connection, and they're not in cahoots. I mean, it's a dirty game. It's a dirty game in front of everybody, in front of the scene and behind the scene. So it's a dirty game going on. So chances are you may not get a fair trial. You may not get a fair justice like you think. I mean, we want fair justice, right? But it's not going to always happen, because it depends on who the judge is, who the prosecutor is, who the defense attorney is, and who the jury is. That's who it depends on. And, the juries are regular citizen people that work regular jobs. if anybody did jury duty, they just regular citizen people that are randomly selected by the courts, just randomly on the computer. Your name end up popping up. They send you a letter in the mail. Who come serve jury duty, etc., and you come serve those jury duties. All right, but they do eliminate. They do go through the process of elimination. Okay, they go through the process of elimination. So they might have like 30 people in the room, and then with those 30 people in the room, they might go through the process of elimination of pick who they want to serve on the jury stand. All right, so because you only get like, maybe it depends, you might get like 10 people that's serving on the jury stand, or maybe 11 at the most. You don't get that many jury people. So you don't get that many jurors out there. So with that being said, if they go through the process of elimination, so they might have you sitting up in there in the waiting room for like 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours. You be waiting in the waiting room for about 2 hours. Then when you're in the courtroom, you gotta wait, and then you gotta tell them your name and what you do, and etc., and why you think you can't serve jury duty, why you should be there to serve it, and why you should not be there to serve it, etc. And then they decide for themselves that whether they can keep you or whether they can let you go. Right? So they are, once they go through that process of elimination, then they already got the people who they want to serve on the jury. So that's how the jury process goes. I have served on jury duty before, but most of the things that I have done, it was more so of like civil cases. Thank goodness I didn't have to do anything that was for criminal cases, because I don't want to deal with criminal cases. But I had to serve on that for like civil cases stuff, like little stuff like traffic issues and like little traffic tickets and things like that. Yeah, mainly stuff like that. So it wasn't nothing really major, but yeah, it wasn't nothing really major. But it was all right though. But yeah, anyways, so that's just how it is. They pick and choose the jury very carefully, and at that time period, of course, they picked the all-white jury because they didn't really want blacks being on there. And they know how it is when you get a black person serving on jury. 9 times out of 10, that black person might say, objection, I don't think this person is guilty. They should not be serving time, etc. Or this person is guilty, etc. So they knew how to pick their jurors at that time period. Okay. Now I want to also share some more information. Hey John, how you doing? Hey, John, how you doing? Okay, so now I got some more sources here. All right, so this is called Black Power in the South, Urban Protest, Neighborhood Activism in Atlanta, Georgia, by Winston A. Grady Willis. Okay. And it is published by Presene African Edition. It's some type of French source or something. So, anyways, let's go down here. And let's look at this. So this goes into the activism that took place in Atlanta, Georgia, and the urban protests and whatnot. Okay, so let's see where we can start at. And you can go on jster.org and find out this information on jster.org. All right, jster.org. All right, so let's go here and read the first. I'm gonna read like the first 4 paragraphs over here. So it starts with the introduction. It says, one of the most striking features of the Black Power phase of the African American freedom struggle was the series of violent clashing between neighborhood residents and police in score of cities during the latter half of the 1960s. A collective catalyst in propelling the movement of established Black activists for these protests were significant in that they also served to empower participants at the grassroots level. A number of studies have traced the development of the 1960s grassroots urban protest movements in Watts, Harlem, Detroit, South Chicago, and other northern Black enclaves. What has been lost on most scholars, however, was that the first of these militant demonstrations took place in the Deep South. A violent community police confrontation rocked Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, shortly after white terrorists bombed the homes of key Black activists. 3 years later, Atlanta forgotten Black folk would force the city to come to terms with its own problems, with disorder, the state euphemism for such volatile grassroots activism. Violent protest demonstrations in communities such as Summerhill, Peoplestown, and Dixie Hills graphically and illustrate the growing ideological chasm between radical and moderate Black activism. Established Black leaders faced the most sweeping challenge yet to their authority in the African American community as the radical activists of the student nonviolent coordinating committee began working with limited success. In some of the city's poorest Black neighborhoods, more significant, however, the violent protests of the mid to late 1960s gave rise to a core group of tenacious grassroots activists, including legendary local welfare rights organizer Ethel May Matthews, who continued to labor in the trenches. And if you guys don't know what the trenches is, the urban communities. Give me one moment. All right. Anyways, the lives of most Blacks in 1960s, Atlanta continued to constrained by the racial discrimination, segregation, violence, and systematic economic and political marginalization engendered by the apartheid policies of the post-Reconstruction U.S. South. The city's political leaders boasted that nearly 30% of municipal workforce was Black and described Atlanta as home to ever expanding African American middle class. However, the people of neighborhoods such as Summerhill, Peoplestown, and Dixie Hill were familiar with more sobering statistics. The majority of Blacks in the city had no formal education above the 8th grade level. Half of the employed men worked in unskilled jobs. Over 40% of the women's raised and provided for their children alone. By 1965, the city's Black neighborhoods comprised only 22% of Atlanta residential land area, yet they contained nearly 45% of its population. Poor Blacks had been boxed in economic and geographically by racial zoning ordinance and the new expressways. A National Education Association study concluded that Atlanta was the third most segregated city in the United States at the beginning of the decade. The adjacent mixed-income neighborhoods of Summerhill and Peoplestown had been disfigured by urban renewal condemnation, which ushered in construction of new freeways through the city. Summerhill was one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city and one of a select few which had been both ethnically and socially diverse. A steady stream of solidly middle-class black families left the neighborhood in the 1950s and the early 1960s to occupy new homes in the areas on the city's west side. While these more affluent blacks had to contend with obstacles of their own, their less fortunate former neighbors, mostly renters, battled and endured deteriorating conditions that sometimes included rodent infestation and absence of indoor plumbing. We get $85 a month to live on from welfare and Social Security. An elderly black couple in Summerhill explained in 1963, when we pay $45 for rent, there is not much left for food, clothes, and other things. A middle-aged divorced mother of three complained that her landlord would not even paint this house. I have lived here for 29 years. Damn. Okay. So it said the telling blow to the Summerhill and Peoplestown neighborhoods came with the construction of the $18 million Atlanta Stadium in 1965. Ethel Mae Matthews, a single working mother, was the first renter evicted without prior notice. Her landlord provided an ultimatum to get out or be bulldozed downright immediately at that time. The bulldozer was already in the yard. I went to crying because I didn't know what to do. She recalls she and her 4 children found temporary housing with a nearby relative, and we had to sleep on the floor. As historian Alton Hornsby Jr. has noted, Summerhill had become one of a growing number of economically depressed and relatively isolated neighborhoods in the city that most whites rarely saw, and one that middle-class black ignored. Pastor Roy Williams, the vice president of the Summerhill Civic League, was aware of the unemployment, inadequate housing, and dearth of municipal services which plagued the neighborhood's residents. I have told our city politician we were sitting on a powder keg. The conditions here are some of the worst in Atlanta. All right, and then go down. It says the fuse that eventually blew that keg wide open ignited shortly after 1 p.m. on Tuesday, September 6, 1966. Atlanta Police Detective R.H. Kerr and Patrolman Lamar Harris spotted Harold Prather driving a car near the intersection of Ortmont and Capitol, a man with a history of automobile theft conviction. Prather had been suspected in yet another car theft case. The police officer called out Prather's name, but he refused to follow their instruction. Instead, he leaped from the car and started running towards his mother's house on Ormond Street. The patrolman called for the unarmed Prather to stop, but he again refused to do so. Harris then fired 3 shots, 2 of which struck Prather in his hip and side, and as his mother yelled for the policeman to put away his gun, the wounded man stumbled to steps on his mother's home but went no further. Police got Prather into a ambulance as a crowd onlookers gathered at the scene. All right. And again, it goes into further details about the whole riot. So I'm just gonna stop right at the very end where it says Black Power. All right. So right here, I'm gonna highlight it for you. So it says in the hours that followed Prather's shooting, the once small crowd grew by 100. As the group grew in size, so did the tenor of its agitation. William Ware and Bobby Walton, activists from the Atlanta Project of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, addressed the militant crowd from a sound truck, then provided residents an opportunity to speak about police brutality in their neighborhoods. Soon, several other SNCC workers arrived from a national planning meeting being held less than 15 minutes away. SNCC workers had already established a presence in the Vine City neighborhood where they organized several demonstrations to protest police brutality and harassment. Roughly 3 hours after the initial incident, the residents of Summerhill and Peoplestown confronted police in riot gears in what had become a full-scale protest demonstration at the intersection of Capitol Avenue and Ormond Street. Atlanta Mayor Ivan Allen went directly to the site of the community police confrontation in an effort to mollify Summerhill residents. About the same time, police and reinforcement brought shotguns on the scene. Why the shotguns? Why the shotgun? Black residents shouted. They're not going to use them. Mayor Allen responded, adding, "They're here to protect you." A number of young blacks vehemently disagreed with the mayor's takes on the situation, shouting back, "Kill the white bastards, kill the white cops." Demonstrators overturned both a police car and a civilian car. Mayor Allen himself atop a police car continued his effort at pacification, but to no avail. By this time, protesters had drowned out his words with chant of white devil, and black power, black power. All right, so that's this article here. Again, this article came out in 2000, and it's called Black Power in the South, Urban Protests and Neighborhood Activism in Atlanta, Georgia by Winston A. Grady Willis, and it can be found on jstor.org, which is JSTOR.org, JSTOR.org. All right. All right. So, all right. So, anyways, that's all I have for the information that's available. Also, I have some book for you guys to check out. All right, so this book right here is called "The Way It Was in the South: The Black Experience in Georgia." So, right, so if you guys are interested in learning more about the experience that took place in Georgia altogether, here's this book right here. It's called "The Way It Was in the South: The Black Experience in Georgia," and it was written by Donald L. Grant. All right. Okay, so you guys can check this book out. One day I'm gonna get into this book and get to talking more about the history as far as like the slavery that went on in the South here in Georgia, and also not only just slavery history, but all the way up to like civil rights and the current day, etc. So I'm gonna be using this book, and also I have another book that I recommend you guys to check out as well. So this is particularly dealing with Atlanta history. So as you can see, the pictures right here are the over here is Maynard Jackson with Corella Scott, and that's when they changed the name of the street to Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. I forgot what it used to be called, but I forgot what the street used to be. But yeah, that's when they had the whole street sign celebration. And then over here was a protest about the Atlanta children that was killed around the 80s. They was found in the Chattahoochee River. Some of them was found in the Chattahoochee River area, which is not too far from Cobb County, like a long count. It's a long Cobb County way. So you guys, if you guys don't know about that, you might want to check that out. One day I'm gonna get into that about Wayne Williams and the missing children of Atlanta around that was like the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah, the missing children. So these women, they was protesting for that. So yeah, the mothers, they was out there protesting, called for justice for all the children that was killed. So, but anyways, it goes into the history. It says politics and class in the making of modern Atlanta. Maurice J. Hubbardston. All right, so you guys check this book out. You can find it on Amazon. And yeah, you can find it on Amazon. Okay. Let me see. Actually, what year this book was written? All right, this book was written in 2017. 2017. And this book right here was written in This book was written in 1993. Now, I was fortunate enough to be able to buy this book at an event that I went to, but you guys might be able to find it on, I might be able to find it on Amazon. I'm not sure. So you can look it up on Amazon website. But anyway, this book here is called The Way It Was in the South, The Black Experience in Georgia, Donald L. Grant. Okay. And The Black Mecca. All right. Just hold it up for you. All right. All right. So anyways, that's all I have for today. So thank you guys for watching the channel, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell. With that being said, I hope you all have a good one. And I hope you all enjoy your Labor Day. For those of you that are celebrating Labor Day, if you just chilling, that's cool too, because that's what I'm doing. I'm chilling. And with that being said, I will connect with you guys later. So this is your girl, Tiffany, and I'm logging out. With that being said, may peace and power elevation be to all of you. Please be safe. All right. Peace.